We look before and after and pine for what is not. Our sincerest laughter with some pain is fraught. Our sweetest songs are those that tell of saddest thoughts. These lines couldn't have been penned by anyone else but Percy Bysshe Shelley, a romantic poet who regaled the world with his beautiful poems, has rendered not only English poetry but world poetry richer for posterity. A poet who wrote Ozymandias and Prometheus Unbound brought a new outlook and higher purpose of human life on this earth. But Shelley's romanticism and spirit of humanism sadly was largely confined only to his poetry. In his real life, he was moody, lustful, of a wavering mind, had a volatile temper, and was a terror to those around him, especially the women who loved him. Shelley spent a comfortable childhood, but because he had a mind of his own, he did not agree to whatever was being told or commanded to him. Hence, in his schooling years at the Eton, Shelley ran into trouble most of the times. Being fascinated by science, he preferred to read rather than participate in sports and outdoor activities. This made him a frequent victim of abuse by the older students at Eton. He was treated as an outsider because he refused to act as a servant to the seniors. As a result, Shelley was ruthlessly bullied by everyone. The worst part was that the headmasters, who also didn't like Shelley, would often overlook his suffering. Shelley was moreover a prankster who enjoyed experimenting with dangerous stuff. On one occasion, he almost electrocuted his tutor by connecting a charged Leyden jar to his doorknob. He blew off a tree with gunpowder in the Eton campus. No wonder he was known as Mad Shelley. Shelley was a confirmed atheist. He wrote many essays voicing his disbelief in God and religion, the most famous of them being The Necessity of Atheism. But it did not go down well with the Oxford administration, and Shelley was expelled from the university. Shelley had affairs with many women, the most notable one being with Harriet Westbrook. Against everyone's orders to the contrary, the young rebellious Shelley eloped with Harriet to Scotland and married her. This angered his father so much that he cut off all financial aid to his son. However, the love between the two young lovers lasted for a very short duration, with Shelley falling hopelessly in love with Mary Godwin, daughter of the political activist William Godwin. Mary was young, pretty, and intelligent, making Shelley abandon Westbrook at a time when the latter was pregnant with their second child. Harriet was so heartbroken that she committed suicide soon after. Surprisingly, however, Shelley shared a very close bond, a non-sexual one, with a school teacher called Elizabeth Hitchener. She would go on to serve as a muse to Shelley, who described Hitchener as his second self. It is quite interesting to note that William Godwin, who opposed the relationship of his daughter Mary with Shelley, did not hesitate in touching the young poet constantly for money. This was one association the young romantic could have done without. Godwin is said to have almost blackmailed Shelley into providing him with money, at times under different names to avoid public scandal. At one point of time, Shelley became good friends with Lord Byron too, but they distanced from each other later on. Though it has never become clear what was the reason for the fallout between them, yet when Claire Clairmont, the cousin to Mary Godwin, gave birth to Byron's illegitimate daughter, Shelley and Mary gave refuge to the child as they knew how irresponsible a father Byron was. Byron was strangely associated with Shelley's mysterious death. Shelley's boat was called Don Juan, Byron's famous poem. On 8th July 1822, as Shelley was sailing in his boat, a storm struck, capsizing the boat and drowning the poet with his two companions. However, despite Shelley's apparent drowning, several theories attribute more sinister reasons for his death. Some argued that Shelley and his companions were robbed and either killed or left for dead by the pirates. Others wrote that Shelley was targeted for political reasons. And yet another theory is that Shelley was depressed and deliberately caused his boat to get caught in the storm so that he might die. Byron was heartbroken at Shelley's death and said, I quote, "I never met a man who wasn't a beast in comparison to him," unquote. Sadly, Byron was one of the very few who expressed sadness at Shelley's death. One obituary in the United Kingdom wrote, I quote, "Shelley, the writer of some infidel poetry, has been drowned. Now he knows whether there is God or no," unquote. When Shelley's decomposed body was found 10 days after he drowned, it was in a bad shape. He was cremated, but his heart had got calcified, and hence it did not really burn up totally. Leigh Hunt, his friend and fellow poet, fished out the heart from the burning pyre. Rumor has it that Mary Shelley took that heart and kept it wrapped up in pages of her husband's last written poem till she died. After her demise, their son Percy took charge of the heart. Finally, it got buried along with Percy in his grave. Shelley was accused of having many personality disorders too. Knowingly or not, he caused immense pain to those around him, especially the women who loved him. As a young child, Shelley is said to have thrown his baby brother's crib into a strawberry bed and also terrorized his sisters. But they all adored him. Shelley is known to have terrorized women and children by telling them horror stories. Known to have a volatile temper, Shelley had once seized the hand of a fellow student and impaled it to the desk with a fork. Shelley was liable to periods of sleepwalking at times of stress and prey to strange waking dreams that appeared to leave him unsure what was memory and what hallucination. The young romantic was known to have a rigid daily schedule and would refuse to converse except at set times. His recurrent physical clumsiness, his mood swings, his discomfort in social situations, and his sensitivity to discordant noises made him pretty unpopular among friends. As a poet, Shelley voiced his vociferous support to the poor and the oppressed. But in reality, he hardly ever paid any attention to them. He would often leave towns and cities without paying bills of those small tradesmen who were most in need of the money Shelley owed them. It is heartbreaking, to say the least, that a poet who gave us such immortal lines as, "O wind, if winter comes, can spring be far behind?" was himself so insensitive and incapable of understanding the emotional needs of people who loved him.